ora e te iwi, no mai ki Central News. E whakanoia i te wiki o te reo Māori. Ko Hilary Entwistle hau. Me ngā karere o te wā, with 51 entries received for the Trustpower Community Awards in the Tauranga region and another 45 in the Western Bay Plenty, locals have really got behind their volunteers. The Trustpower Community Awards, which recognise and reward voluntary groups for the outstanding contribution they make to the local community, are run in partnership with the Tauranga City Council and Western Bay Plenty District Council. Trustpower Community Relations Representative Jess Somerville says the Trustpower Community Awards help to recognise the people who put their hearts and souls into helping out. 6 applicants have applied for funding to help preserve and enhance Waipa District's unique heritage. Applications have been received from Te Awamutu's parish of St John to replace downpipes and install fire and burglary protection, the Cambridge Bowling Club to replace a roof and spouting, and from Graham and Carol Wood for Cambridge's Abergaldi Heritage Home to replace guttering. Maungatautari Ecological Island Trust is seeking funding for Kiwi transmitters, and Waipa District Council park staff have applied for funding for habitat restoration at Lake Rotopiko. The applications will be considered by the Council's Heritage Committee at the end of July. Drivers flouting speed restrictions outside school zones are the target of Western Bay Plenty Police this week. To mark the start of Term 3, police are running a back-to-school campaign all week at various locations outside Tauranga schools. Western Bay Plenty Road Policing Manager Senior Sergeant Ian Campen says police are paying close attention to school pick-up and drop-off zones, an area of high number of cars and heavy foot traffic. Drivers caught driving 5 kilometres per hour or more above the posted speed limit within 250 metres on either side of any school boundary can expect to receive a speeding infringement notice, including demerit points. Hamiltonians can dust off their dancing shoes next month and get amongst a one-off city celebration that's been 150 years in the making. The anniversary gala ball, to be held on Saturday 23rd of August, will celebrate Hamiltonians' 150th anniversary and the establishment of the city's 2 key tertiary education institutions. Alongside 150 years since the first British settlers arrived in Hamilton City, it's been 90 years since the first classes were taught out of Wintec's heritage building, Wintec House, and 50 years since the University of Waikato opened its doors. Hamilton Mayor Julie Hardacre says the ball promises to be a glamorous and sophisticated evening of fine wine, food, music, dance and entertainment. Tauranga has been identified by the government as a priority city for the development of a housing accord under the Housing Accords and Special Housing Areas Act 2013. The Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment and Tauranga City Council are working on the details of the Tauranga Housing Accord, and it is anticipated that it will be signed by Council and the Ministry of Housing in August. Once the accord has been signed, Tauranga City Council will have the ability to recommend special housing areas to the Minister of Housing. Mayor Stuart Crosby says the accord will enable Council to speed the consenting process for areas where there is a clear demand for housing and there is already suitable infrastructure in place. Now for our marine forecast. West Coast, Raglan. Southwest 20 knots. Your high tide in Raglan is at 7:18 in the morning. East Coast, Bay of Plenty, southwest 15 knots, but 25 knots in the west until the evening. Mostly fine out there. Your high tide is at 4:36 p.m. Just ahead, 100 years of dairying. Welcome to Central News on TV Central. June 16 marked 100 years since 7 men formed Tatua Dairy Cooperative. The anniversary has been acknowledged in a book distributed to all shareholders, outlining the history, developments and achievements of the past 100 years. Anna-Marie spoke with CEO Paul McGilvray and found out that despite all the changes over the past 100 years, some things do stay the same.
Paul, despite all the changes in the world and in dairying over the past 100 years, have the underlying principles of Tatua remained the same?
Pretty much remained the same. We have a set of 6 values in the company. Those values, I think, have always been there. They resonate with staff and with shareholders. But, we've always been independent and proud of it, fiercely independent, you might say. But we also, follow the cooperative ethos. We're a cooperative, so we cooperate willingly and are very happy to do that with other people. And I think those things have sort of stayed with the company since the beginning.
Now, you've had a couple of key events already this year celebrating the centenary. Firstly, tell me about the book.
Yeah, the book's interesting. It was written by an economic historian from Auckland, a guy called Ian Hunter. The book is really our attempt to give a gift to the future from the past. It's full of stories. It's not designed to be a complete history of Tatua, but the stories that make it up. And we've had great reaction to the book. The staff and the shareholders and previous shareholders, they absolutely love it.
You also had a morning tea recently as well.
Yeah, morning tea, well, it was more a lunch, but it was Incorporation Day, and that was the actual month that the deed for Tatua was signed by the original 7 families. So we had quite a lot of fun internally. It was very much an internal function, but we had a lot of speeches, and we had some very interesting entertainment from some of the staff. Not too serious at all, but we really wanted to mark the day that Tatua started, and it was very well received as well.
And the biggie, a gala event coming up in November. Tell me about that.
Yes, we're having a gala dinner and entertainment at Claudelands in Hamilton. We think we'll have about 800 people, maybe up to 1,000. That will include other people from industry, from the dairy industry in New Zealand, so the other dairy companies. It includes our customers from offshore, or many of them, and also staff, shareholders, former shareholders, and so on. So we're really looking forward to that one, and the organisation of that has already started.
What do you think the secret to Tatua's success is?
I'm not sure there's really a secret. I mean, the book lays bare a lot of the things that have made Tatua successful, but a Tatua is actually a Maori flax belt. And it was used for carrying weapons and carrying tools for tilling the soil and so on. I think a flax belt is a good description of Tatua in some respects, because it's many strands coming together to make one stronger thing. It's intergenerational, it's from the land. And that flax belt is much stronger than the individual strands that make it up. So that's kind of a good symbol of why we exist, I think.
Do you think being in a community such as Tatanui, where everybody knows everybody, do you think that helps with the communication as well as the size of Tatua?
To be frank with you, I think it's a two-edged sword. It's very, very positive for community engagement, for commitment. We can have a meeting with our shareholders. If we announce it, we can probably have them all in the local hall in an hour, and it's hard for other companies to do that. So it's got some real advantages, and also, of course, the staff are very committed who live around there. But having said all of that, 50% of our staff come from Hamilton. And also we need to attract the very best people we can get, and unfortunately they don't all live just around the factory. So we kind of push our brand in terms of an employment brand much wider than just Tatanui. But having said all of that community spirit is a big part of what we are.
And also, to my mind, you've kept Tatanui strong. When I think of the demise of other small factories, such as Motumaho, when that factory closed, we lost the butcher, the baker and the candlestick maker, basically. But Tatanui is still going strong in that respect. And I do believe some of that comes from Tatua.
Yes, Yes, I'm certain you're right. I mean, in the 6 years I've been with the company, our staff numbers have grown from 180 to this year will go north of 330. So all of those incomes and so on are going into the communities. But as I said, they go into Hamilton and they go into Te Araha and they go into Matamata and so on as well. So we like to think of ourselves probably not, sort of having an impact wider than just Tātānui. But having said that, Tatua is in really good shape, and we really are, with some of the payouts we've had in recent years and so on, pushed a lot of money into the community, and we're very proud about that because, supporting your community is pretty fundamental for business as well.
Absolutely, and the Dairy Whip, of course, you just can't go past that Dairy Whip can.
That's an iconic product.
I saw it in Perth. I was shopping and lived in Perth, saw it on the supermarket shelves, and it's Dairy Whip in Perth.
Dairy Whip. Dairy Whip's a very interesting story. Actually, in the book, they have the story of Dairy Whip. It's kind of symbolic of Tatua in some respects because Dairy Whip was not a fast development. It took 25 years to develop Dairy Whip with all of the problems that went along with it. And the author of our book describes it as a 25-year overnight sensation, which I think is a pretty good description.
Who hasn't squirted it straight into their mouth from the can?
I can't comment on that.
No, neither can I. Can anyone get a copy of that book, or is it just for shareholders?
It was designed for shareholders and staff predominantly, but having said that, it's on sale in Whitcoulls. So anyone can get a copy of it.
What's next for the next 100?
Well, 100 years is a long time to look forward, and as the back of our tankers say, we turn often, so I think looking at 100 years is probably a bit difficult from here. But in the next 10 years, I have some thoughts about what could happen in the next 10 years. I think our revenue will go from 250 to 400 million or so. I think our staff numbers will climb from 300 to 500. I think we'll have offices in more countries than just Japan. We've talked about the USA, Indonesia, Middle East, as well as our office in China, which is going in this year. So there's a number of things. I also think too we'll probably make big progress on our environmental sustainability.
It's very important.
Very important.
For more details, go to tatua.com. Coming up next, the Bay of Plenty Regional Council's annual plan. Welcome back to Central News. The annual plan of the Bay of Plenty Regional Council has been released. I caught up with Chair Doug Leader to find out about one of their major projects for the year, flood risk and river scheme sustainability.
This is an ongoing project. Flood risk and river schemes is a big issue for the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, especially as we move east. We have large infrastructure projects in terms of managing flood risk, big schemes. The council contribute 20% funding to these schemes, otherwise they're particularly owned and managed in terms of the money goes into 80% by the beneficiaries of those schemes. That's the first issue. In terms of flood risk mitigation outside those schemes, we're working with the TLAs, particularly in the Western Bay and Tauranga here, where for whatever reason there is urban development in areas that now we realise, or the TLAs recognise, are in probably risk or high risk zones. So we're working in conjunction with them, trying to look at mitigation and how we manage that going forward, especially with the proposed risk around climate change, adverse weather events, the increase in those things.
In this annual plan, you've stated that you may consider raising the debt level. What kind of situation would justify raising the debt?
We don't propose in this year's annual plan to raise any debt at all. The Regional Council is in a relatively healthy state, and that's a function of some investments that we've made in the past. The issue in the annual plan that mentions that is really just a financial accommodation that does give us the opportunity to do that should a set of circumstances arise where we have to. But forecast looking forward, there's no, we won't have to do that.
The harbour has a major port inside, the Port of Tauranga. Does that increase the level of pollution and make it a little bit harder for the council to kind of monitor the environment there?
The reality is that wherever you have development, whether it's urban development or whether it's industrial development, there is always going to increase the risk of some form of contaminant or risk around how we operate those resources. But in the Tauranga Harbour here, yes, we do have some large industrial activity. We have the port itself. But we have consents in process to that, and we have consents in place to manage those issues. We have monitoring systems in place to monitor the outcomes of those issues. So yes, it does increase the risk having industrial activity around Tauranga Harbour, but we consider that we have taken all steps that we consider necessary to minimise the risk, although you can never exit risk totally.
This is your first term as the chair. Do you think you've inherited a council that has balanced the economics and environment quite well in the past?
I think it has. We have, but clearly, community expectations around environmental protection or enhancement, it's become an issue in the last decade that has really come to the fore. I think we've done pretty well. Don't rest on our laurels. We have more work to do, but I think we need to look at, in the past we've probably looked at it in terms of the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. And for example, if we deal with the Tauranga Harbour, there is little logic in dealing with the Tauranga Harbour as trying to rectify issues when the exacerbator or the cause of some of the issues we're facing in the Tauranga Harbour, be siltation or nutrients, actually have their genesis at the top of the catchment. So I think the community needs to recognise, and we need to have the dialogue with them to say that if we are to make improvements, that's the sensible place to start, rather than, as I said, have the ambulance picking up and trying to resurrect the effects of catchment, lack of catchment focus in dealing with what we've got.
Sea lettuce, nobody seems to like it. What's the council doing about that?
It's ongoing, and you're right. If you live in a community where you have to endure the effects of rotting sea lettuce, it's not very pleasant. But the reality is that sea lettuce is a naturally occurring substance. We need to better understand, in the Tauranga Harbour in particular, the interrelationship between what goes on in the catchment in terms of nutrient inflows versus the naturally occurring cycle of sea lettuce, which is a combination of the climate, sea temperature, the current movements that bring those things into the harbour. We are fortunate here in Tauranga to have the Coastal Marine Centre, which is a partially funded activity that we have with the Regional Council. They're looking at these issues. We have other industrial players around the Tauranga Harbour catchment looking at these issues, minimising things. But I think the reality is that sea lettuce is a naturally occurring substance. We should, we're in reality say we're going to have to live with it. It's a degree to which we can mitigate those adverse effects and the scale of the problem.
A copy of the annual plan can be found on the Council's website, boprc.gov.nz. Just ahead, your weather and illegal workers. Is it common in the kiwifruit industry? Welcome back. In May, there was an investigation that found 8 illegal workers in the kiwifruit industry in the Bay of Plenty. A working group has been established to counteract this problem. I spoke with New Zealand kiwifruit growers to see if illegal immigrants are common in the kiwifruit industry.
During harvest, we employ 8,000 seasonal workers, and what we do is we run programs to try and ensure that all our workers are legal. But Kate, you can comment on that.
Yeah, we've received quite a lot of calls this season and in seasons before it from illegal workers wanting us to set them up with some growers who may take them on, and we say no. We don't want illegal workers in our industry, and nor do we advise our growers to accept those illegal workers.
Was the compliance strategy a result of that?
No, it wasn't. This just came out of general discussions with the Ministry about how we might do business better, and we're sort of doing a pilot for the whole of New Zealand. If this works, the Ministry will run it out for other industries as well.
Can you tell me more about what the actual compliance strategy is?
The compliance strategy will work on us having set formats which are used consistently across the industry for workers. For example, when the Ministry enforcement agents go on to an orchard, they want to know, does that person have the right immigration status? Do they have an employment agreement? And the idea that we've hatched is that we'll issue every worker with a card with their photo on it, and you won't get that card until it's been proved you have the right immigration status and the right employment agreement. So that card will be automatic proof that this person is entitled to work.
So essentially it's like a identity card for workers in the industry?
Yes, yes it is. Yeah. But just a way to speed things up and to give our growers and our contractors assurance that that worker is in all respects legal.
Ian Fry has been appointed as the Kiwifruit Employment Development Manager. What's that role going to involve?
That role is all about getting Kiwis into work. There are about 11,000 Kiwis in the Bay of Plenty ready for work today through Work and Income. The problem with those workers is they need to have a period of training to get them used to the fact of going to work, but most importantly, staying at work. And also what we need to do with them is give them some little bit of skills, because everything you do in Kiwifruit requires skills. So if you can get someone work ready, where they will turn up to work and stay at work and have a little bit of skill, what we're hoping to do is take a lot of Kiwis off Work and Income's books and bring them into the industry.
Later on in the week, we talk with them more about their recruitment drive. Now for the weather for Opopo. Hamilton mostly fine with a frosty start and southwest breezes. Your expected high is 12 and an overnight low of -1. The rest of the Waikato fine also with frost and southwesterlies. Paeroa 11 and an overnight low of 1. Matamata 10 and 0. Te Awamutu 10 and -1. And Tokoroa 8 and -2 your overnight low. Tauranga, your Wednesday will be fine with a possibility of frost in the morning. Your expected high is 14 and an overnight low of 2. The rest of the Bay of Plenty, fine with frost and a southwesterly. Your expected high is 10 Te Puke and an overnight low of 3. That is Central News for today. Like us on Facebook or email us news@tvcentral.co.nz. Let us know of an upcoming event in your community, or if you think there's something that should be addressed in your community. Join me again tomorrow night for more stories from the Bay of Plenty and the Waikato. I'm Hilary Entwistle. I hope you have a lovely evening.
This has been an Alpha Media production, a division of Television Media Group.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.